Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And today we're going to be taking a close look at Germany, and more precisely the former East Germany, through the prism of literature. Because my guest today is a man who's written what I think is one of the best German novels in years. And it's not just me who says that. The novel in question was awarded the 2011 German Book Prize. And here is the author, Eugen Ruge.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us here today on Talking Germany. I'm very, very excited.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Eugen Ruge's book is called In Times of Fading Light. It's a family saga, indeed the story of his own family. It's wise and it's insightful, so I'm sure that we can very much look forward to hearing what this very thoughtful storyteller has to say about today's topics. Story and history. Eugen Ruge doesn't pass judgment. He just tells the story of his family and his country as it really was. It's fascinating stuff. The fabric of history. So what was it like to be a citizen in the former East Germany? We take a look at two museums that answer that question in very different ways. And historic distance. An ancient Greek messenger once ran from Marathon to Athens. Our guest is one of over 100,000 runners here in Germany who regularly cover the same distance. Eugen Ruge, welcome once again. Fantastic book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I've got that out of the way now to begin with. The judges who awarded you the 2011 German Book Prize, the prestigious Book Prize, they said, and I quote here, your book tells the story of the utopia of socialism. Now, before that was discredited, what was the utopia of socialism?
Yeah, I would say equality, not in the sense that all people are equal, but that they have the same chances, for example, disregarding from what social circumstances, from what families they came. Yeah, maybe this is the main target of socialism, of original ideas.
Okay, so equality of opportunity. And when you were a youngster,
yeah,
was that a utopia, a vision that you shared in?
You know, my father shared that utopia. He was in prison camp in the Soviet Union. I was born in that not in the prison camp, but very close to that prison camp, in a kind of village called Sosva, behind the Ural.
Ural Mountains.
Yeah, and therefore. I always knew about that fact, and I always knew about the crimes of Stalinism, of what happened in the Soviet Union in the 30 and 40 years, yeah, and therefore my ability to have such an utopia was small since the beginning, I would say, yeah.
Okay. And the fact that you were disillusioned with the vision that your parents and your grandparents had, that's what the book that you've written is very much about.
Yeah.
Why did it take... If you were already disillusioned as a very young man, why did it take so long for you to write the book?
Oh, there are many reasons. First thing maybe that while I lived in the GDR, I found the GDR boring, yeah.
Boring?
Boring.
The former East Germany was boring.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of things to describe the former East Germany. Some people say it was cosy, some people say it was cruel, and you say it was boring.
It was boring, yeah. Not the stuff to write a big novel about, you know. And maybe the most interesting item or issue of our family story was the story of my father, who was in prison camp in the Soviet Union. He went to the Soviet Union as a young man, as a communist, and then got in the came into the prison camp. And this was an interesting story, but this was his story. Yeah, he had to write the story, not me. Yeah, and to write about the GDR was maybe this was one of the reasons why I fled from the GDR to Western Germany in 1988, because I wanted to be a writer, yeah? And had the feeling that I could not write anything about the GDR, you know.
So you had to get away from it to be able to look at it from a distance.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe, and from the distance, I understood that there are indeed interesting figures, interesting persons, interesting stories in my family.
Okay, you bet there are. We'll talk about some of that in a very short time. First impressions there from Eugen Ruge. Here is more.
Reading, discussing, signing books, all in a day's work for a best-selling author. Eugen Ruge is calm and composed in the face of the marketing hype. He's reinvented himself too often to be thrown off by an unexpected twist of fate. Eugen Ruge came from a family of German communists. In 1933, his father Wolfgang Ruge fled from the Nazis to Russia. When the war broke out, all the Germans living in Russia were considered suspicious. Under Stalin, he was sentenced to forced labour and exiled. He later married a Russian. Their son Eugen was born in 1954 in Siberia. In 1956, the family was rehabilitated and moved to East Germany. There, Eugen's father became a celebrated historian. He became a member of the ruling Socialist Unity Party and was given the state's national award. Eugen Ruge steered clear of politics, at least as much as possible in the GDR. He studied mathematics and developed an earthquake prediction model at the Institute of Physics in Potsdam. In 1985, he quit his job and began working as a writer for documentary films. In 1988, he fled to the West. There, he wrote plays and dramatised readings and translated Chekhov into German. His first novel, In Times of Fading Light, was a huge success. More than 20 years after the end of the GDR, Eugen Ruge told the story of the downfall of a family of German communists, while at the same time describing the loss of a socialist utopia. The plot centres on the 90th birthday of Wilhelm, a resistance fighter and the oldest protagonist in the family saga. It's the 1st of October 1989, shortly before the wall came down.
Every year he was awarded some medal or another. Every year some speeches were given. Every year the same awful cognac was served in the same colourful aluminum cups. And every year, it seemed to Irina, Wilhelm was surrounded by more courtiers. They multiplied, a sort of miniature breed, lots of little people in grubby grey suits, who Irina could not tell apart, who laughed all the time and spoke a language that Irina really, even with the best intentions, did not understand.
Most of the book was written on the Baltic island of Rügen. Ruge, a passionate runner, inherited a vacation home here. For his debut, the 57-year-old was awarded the 2011 German Book Prize. Today, he's our guest on Talking Germany, Eugen Ruge.
And Eugen Ruge, you initially trained as a mathematician, as we saw there in that report. You then worked as a mathematician and in the sort of field of physics, those combined pretty much.
Physics, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Did you realise back then, when you were a young scientist, that there was a writer in you?
Yes, at least I always wanted to write. Yeah. My father pushed me a little bit, maybe, to study science, not humanities,
Which was dangerous territory.
Dangerous, the risk of intervention of the Communist Party and so on was smaller, of course, in science, There was still a risk, of course, but it was smaller, and and then I fell in love with my math teacher, I should say. So it's not only because of my father's pushing, but it was my decision, of course, to study mathematics. But on the long distance, I always knew that at least I want to write. I didn't know if I could, but I wanted. Yeah.
Okie dokie. And then there was this long phase in between times where you wrote drama and this kind of thing, translations.
Yes.
Yeah. And then finally, your book that we've been talking about came out, won the book prize in 2011. I'm very interested in why, when I read it, I didn't know much about it and I didn't want to know much about it. And quickly I began to realise the people you are describing in the book must be your own family. Yeah?
Half and half. I would say half and
but
half. I took a lot of stuff from my own family, of course. Yeah, you cannot write about things which you are not involved in a very personal way. Yeah, of course. At least I would say it's not interesting to read things. Even fantasy stories are, in some way, I think, if they are interesting, are very personally. Is it right?
Personal, absolutely.
Very personal. Yeah.
And how nervous were you when you were writing the book that you were exposing people in your own family? Because you really you show people to be sometimes very blinkered, to be very blind, to be very prejudiced. Yeah,
you know,
it's quite harsh.
Maybe, but the trick is maybe that I wrote the story from different perspectives. I went into the characters, and spreaded their truth in this novel, and kept out as an author. As an author, I didn't. That's the point.
I tried to tell the story from the characters' own perspective, their own truth.
Yes, their own truths. Yeah, and that was the point. And I didn't judge them. I didn't. I simply described them or described their perspectives. How they see the things,
And ultimately, you're very generous with the characters, You don't judge them, you don't condemn them.
No, I don't. I don't, of course, Although the perspectives, of course, sometimes contradict each other and sometimes not. Sometimes get in touch with another and sometimes not. It's very different,
Certainly, coming from a perspective outside Germany, we're talking about a novel that is a family saga. And coming from my perspective, you can't have the words family saga and Germany in one sentence without thinking of Thomas Mann's novel, Buddenbrooks. It's the ultimate German family saga. Did you have that book sort of going around in your head when you were writing it all?
No. I of course, I know the Buddenbrooks, and in some way, it makes sense to compare those books because both are not only family sagas, both are telling the fall of a family,
the demise of the family,
the demise of the family. Yes, and then in some way you can compare it, of course.
I think there's another connection as well. That certainly I had the feeling that your family were trying to act out a very bourgeois existence in a country that wouldn't let them do it because it's a communist country. It's a country that wants to be sort of that has no class in that sense. That everybody's in the same class, and your family had real bourgeois pretensions.
Maybe, maybe. So what can I say? This is an experience I made before. My publisher, for example, was very astonished about the fact how much bourgeois life was possible in the GDR.
What?
A lot.
It's astonishing.
Maybe it's astonishing. For me, not. Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's interesting because the book centres around a house. It centres around the houses that people owned. And again, that's a very bourgeois way of life, isn't it? People living there in the suburbs, building these properties around them. Tell me this, how it's essentially a book about East Germany, but it's also about Germany as a whole.
And more than this. It's maybe I try to, you know, to put this small GDR, in a kind of geopolitical and historical context. That's what I tried. Not only to see this small country isolated. But to show that it's part of all.
How did people in East Germany respond to the book, if you can generalize in that sense?
It's hard to generalize because there are people, for example, from the very left who, I would say, hate the book, and there are many people who appreciate that the GDR and the life in the GDR appears as an important thing, and not as a life, as a second class or second-hand life. That's maybe for the most people important, that they, when they're looking back, that they recognize that even we had a kind of life, and that we were alive, and that's the point, I think.
That's a very interesting point. Wow. Now, we've been talking about what was once East Germany, and these days that country's relatively short-lived existence is documented by all sorts of museums. So let's now visit two of them. One is located in the state of Thüringen, formerly in the west of East Germany, and the other is just across the line that used to be the Iron Curtain in Lower Saxony, which used to be the far east of West Germany.
Welcome to the GDR Museum.
In Klettenberg, in the north of Thüringen, the German Democratic Republic lives on undaunted. Everyday life as it was in East Germany is preserved here. The restaurant serves up East German culinary classics, and guests dine under the watchful gaze of Erich Honecker, the GDR's head of state until 1989. Anyone who wants to spend the night can sleep in an original army bed.
Some people think people in East Germany ate with aluminium cutlery, but we had stainless steel just like everywhere else.
Just a stone's throw away, in what was West Germany, the focus is on the terror of the former border. A guard's voice booms over the loudspeaker. 34 kommen. Dogs bark, the siren wails, the atmosphere feels creepy and threatening. It feels realistic enough.
This is recent German history. It has to be dealt with for the sake of young people who didn't experience it. 20 years have passed. It's important to show young people how a nation was once divided.
Back in the museum on the other side of the old border, Anita Wiebrecht enjoys chatting about the old days.
We had that at home with the fairy tale, and my daughter had that sewing machine.
She loves moments like these, when people share their own memories of the discarded things she's collected on the shelves of her museum. It's familiar.
Look at this handwork. Do you remember that? These bits are from the lids of coffee creamer. We saved them and rinsed them, and then crocheted around them.
Living under communism meant being creative with resources. The museum does not try to offer visitors a critical examination of the past. Opened in 2009, it's more like a cheerful curiosity cabinet.
Of course, there was the secret police, and there were plenty of prisons, and plenty of people who were abused in those prisons or in children's homes. Those reports are true. But at the time, normal East Germans didn't know much about it.
Anita Wiebrecht thinks that needs to be set straight.
You must have seen this photo on the fence.
Back in Tettenborn in Lower Saxony, Rainer Böhle is showing two visitors from the Netherlands how the alarm was sounded during escape attempts.
Watch this. The red lamp lights up at Zone 69 and a guard is called. It sounds like this. Listen.
34 kommen. 34 kommen. 34 hört.
I do think that when someone sees this, all the old stories they've heard really come to life. And they understand it better.
After the wall fell, West German Rainer Böhle began gathering things for the museum. He drove through the former East, taking whatever people gave him.
It sounds strange, but they were happy to get rid of it. They didn't want to be confronted with it anymore, and that's why they gave it all to me.
A former German military ensign, Böhle has always been fascinated by the border. Since 1992, the museum has welcomed 150,000 visitors. Many of them are older people, but some are school children on field trips. Böhle is convinced his museum will be around for a long time.
We have a lot of heritage museums, and people like to go there, and other museums. Some are old mines and they're popular, and this Borderland Museum will always have a place.
It's about keeping alive the memory of what happened, not about glorifying the past, but rather showing what really happened in this time, how people were really locked in.
In Klettenberg, the chilling history of the border between East and West makes up only a tiny part of the exhibit. Anita Wieprecht says she wanted her museum to show that not everything was bad in the GDR.
Not everything was bad in the GDR. True?
Okay, of course there was a kind of daily life in the GDR, yeah? And this life, you know, if you compare it again with the whole world, yeah, we had a refrigerator and a washing machine, how do we call it? Yeah, washing machine and a TV and so on, and there was no hunger, of course, in the GDR, yeah. Indeed, Stasi and such
the secret police,
didn't appear at each corner, at any time.
That's interesting that you say that, because the Stasi they don't appear in your novel either. I don't think they get mentioned.
It appears there is one guy at the birthday party who is a colonel of the Staatssicherheit, of the security police. Yeah. And he calls for more democracy.
But listen, in that report that we've just seen, you know, there are people who can pay money to go to a museum and they can stay overnight and they can sleep in former East German army beds.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you had a terrible time in the former East German army. Tell me about that. That's the reality.
Yes, that was. I don't. This type of museum I don't appreciate very much. I would say yes. This was hard. No, but I was at the border. I was a border guard.
You were a border guard
of the iron at the iron what we call iron curtain.
And you were an armed border guard.
I was an armed border guard, and by the way, nobody asked me if I would shoot people before coming there. That was.
They expected that you would.
They expected probably that I would. Yeah, I don't know what they expected. Nobody asked me. I came there by randomly, I would say. Yeah. Maybe because I was already married at this time. Yeah,
I see.
And
you were very young though. You were 1920.
Yes, I married my math teacher at this time.
You married your math teacher, the one
really.
who made the scientist out of you.
I was 18 and she was 23 or something like this. Yeah. Didn't I tell you?
No, you're telling me now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a fascinating detail.
We talked about in the interview before. I'm sorry. I mixed it up. And I was married at this time, and maybe therefore they sent me to the border. Yeah, I don't know why. Not because I wanted to shoot people, of course,
But let's pin this down. I really need to know. I mean, not everything was bad in East Germany. How cruel?
I would say.
How cruel was East Germany?
If in case of emergency, yes, the state was, of course, the government was cruel, of course, and. In case of emergency, there were pressure and there were prisons and so on. That's clear. And there was the border. And but there was, I would say it another way. Not that not everything was bad in the GDR. I would say there was a daily life there. You know, there was a quite normal daily life there too. Yeah, even in a dictatorship, people love each other and people marry and people get children and so on. Yeah.
But what was your feeling when you I mean, you actually stood very close to the wall. You can remember that because you've told me that.
Of course.
What was your feeling when you saw the wall?
Yes,
you were in a prison and you knew it.
Yes. I was the guard of my own prison in some sense. You know, it's incredible. Really, I don't know how to describe it. It was a bad feeling. And I knew what the function of this border was. Yeah?
To keep people in.
To keep people in, not to keep people out. Yeah? Every state has the right to keep people out, maybe, but not to keep people in. And I was conscious of that. Yeah.
You've lived a very different life from my life. We're going to move on just a little bit from politics in the former East Germany to a new trend in German politics in Germany now. People, it seems, no longer want to leave decision-making up to their politicians. Instead, petitions, referendums and all sorts of other mechanisms for citizens' participation are the order of the day. So is it necessarily the right way to go?
Frankfurt is Germany's financial hub. It's a wealthy city, used to making money on the markets and in the banks. And Frankfurt takes its residents seriously. It's one of the first major cities in Germany to ask residents what it should spend money on and where it should save.
They're trying to make it more attractive on the local level. Voter participation is 30–40%. That's not very good. So it's a good idea.
Just to be asked. The slogan "Frankfurt asks me" is great.
If they ask in such an explicit way, then I think it's important to take part.
The idea was the head of city finances, Treasurer Uwe Becker. An elaborate advertising campaign plastered the city, encouraging the people of Frankfurt to participate. The next budget will be shaped by the results of the Frankfurt Asks Me survey.
The basic idea is, of course, to get people more interested in the local community, in politics.
For 1 month, everyone could join in the discussion. But only 1 in every 200 residents took part. The most popular suggestions including promoting private tutoring for students and free fruit in schools. If the residents of Frankfurt had their way, the expensive new city hall would never be built, and instead more bike paths. And architectural blunders from the 1960s would be remedied, but it's not entirely up to them. Oliver Merker is an expert on participatory budgeting. He consults cities and communities implementing the project.
Participatory budgeting in Germany is strongly aligned with the representative system. It doesn't supersede it. At the end of the day, people are only giving their suggestions and the politicians are the ones who decide. In Germany, residents can make suggestions. In other countries, that's different. And as a result, politicians receive more input. But in the end, it's the elected politicians who have the power.
While it's no citizens' revolution, the people's budget seems to be gaining acceptance, with more than 100 towns and councils making use of it.
Do you know what I don't understand? When we talk about Germany, a lot of people these days moan about the politicians and say they're no good. They're not doing, they're not doing their jobs well enough for me. But all the visitors that come to Germany, they say the economy's doing well, it's a good liberal place to live, it functions well. How does that all add up? The politicians must be getting something right.
Yeah, maybe the question is not the question if they do a good job is not concerning only Germany, but whole Europe and even the whole world, I would say. Yeah, of course, you are right. The economy works. Yeah, produces a lot of pollution, of course, too. Like working economies do. That's a question the government should talk about, for example, maybe more than it does. Of course, you again can say in China or elsewhere it is much worse. No, I think. So what's the question?
I was slowly edging towards something that I know about you, that I've been told that you are unhappy with the political system in Germany. You're unhappy with the political parties.
Not only in Germany, I would say what we call the multi-system multi-party system, which of course is much more better than the one-party system.
Okay. We've established that fact.
No question, of course. But this needs, of course, two changes, because the living democracy must develop and must change, of course, if it's living. Yes, I see some problems in the current party system, not only in Germany. For example, I don't know what the English whip. Do you say whip in the parliamentary group?
Exactly.
The whip,
the person who's responsible for whipping them all together and making sure that they toe the party line.
For example, it's a scandal. I think it's a scandal because those parliamentarians are responsible to the voters, not to the party, to their party.
So
but in practice, it's they are responsible to their party. They are party people.
So they vote like old East German party blocks.
It's always. And if they are suspended from this compulsion, the leaders, or let's say, in some cases, they are suspended from this compulsion, but this is a joke. They should always be suspended from the compulsion to vote unitary, of course.
So you want politicians,
for example, this is only one example, for what I'm criticizing it.
Okay. Again, I wanted to hear what your opinion is, because I think your opinion is quite typical for very many people in Germany today. A lot of people are disillusioned with the political parties and the political process.
Yes, and it's very intransparent, for example. I don't know what the deals between the big money and the politicians, for example, going on behind closed doors, like we say in Germany, in a conspirative way, I would say, a very dark, lobbying is a very dark thing. I don't know what is going on there and so on. And this is very intransparent,
It's lacking in transparency.
There's a lack in transparency. These are things, and I think this is, can I say in English, it's crusted. It's a crusted system.
Why not? Sounds good to me.
Okay.
It's all sort of encrusted and it's difficult sort of... I tell you, though, it's interesting because I think we, in that respect, we move in different worlds. That you move in the literary world and I move in the world of politics quite often. I meet a lot of politicians and I often find they're better than their reputation.
The persons, if I meet a person, if I meet a politician, personally,
you're okay.
This is not a question. That is not a question that the people are bad. This is a question mostly of the system, of this very crusted party system.
Okay, we've got that cleared up. You're a scientist. You're a mathematician. You were. And you think that way. I want to test you on your. What's the length of a marathon race?
The length?
The length. The precise length.
42 and something kilometers.
You disappoint me. 42 kilometers, 195 meters.
Okay. That's not a question of mathematics.
The reason I'm asking is that Eugen Ruge hasn't just written an epic novel, he also runs in epic races, in marathons to be precise. Now, if you're going to run in what I see as a ridiculous, absurd and inhuman distance, then you should prepare, and you should prepare yourself properly.
He may not look it, but Hans-Peter Becker's a true marathon man. After school, he trades his book bag for running shoes. He's completed 12 marathons. The key, he says, is training despite the weather.
On a day like today with nice sun, not too warm, it's really fun. It's not hard at all. You go out, put your shoes on, and you're excited to leave all your frustrations behind you. But when it's raining, well, of course, that's not as fun.
Training with a partner cuts down the temptation to skip out on workouts. His friends from the Mainz Marathon Club have all run at least 10 marathons. That's a requirement for membership. They may be old pros, but they have a tip for beginners.
The important thing is that you don't just say, I'm going on a marathon adventure, but that you undertake the necessary preparations. It depends on how far along you are, but I guess about 6 to 9 months of intensive training.
The Marathon Club members don't want the run to be an ordeal, so they train intensively. For 5 months, they've been running 4 times a week up to 60 kilometers.
My goal on Sunday is to finish with a time of between 3 hours and 45 minutes and 4 hours, and not to arrive at the finish line on my last legs.
42,195 meters of running, suffering, and triumphing.
42195. That was the distance that the guy ran from Marathon to Athens, of course, all those years ago.
And died after it, yeah.
Did he die afterwards?
Yeah. The first one, the first guy.
I'm not surprised myself. I have run a marathon.
Yeah.
I hated it.
But you're still alive.
I'm still alive to tell the tale, yeah. I tell you, though, there is an interesting fact about the guy. I can't remember his name, the Greek figure, yeah. But some people say he ran sort of this way to Athens, but some other people say he ran sort of a more direct route, and that would only be 35 kilometres.
OK.
That would be more my distance. Well, after 30 kilometres I enjoyed. The last 10 kilometres I hated. Mm-hmm. Have you had that feeling?
I would say I enjoyed the first 20. It was, but I hated the last 7, I would say.
The last 7?
Yeah, the last 7.
That was when it got very painful for me.
Yeah, it's hard.
Let's just have a look at a photo of you. I think we've got one from, if I recall rightly, Berlin Marathon 2004.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah? Was that your first?
That's my first one.
That's your first one?
That's my first one.
And you're finishing there, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm finishing, yeah.
And how did you feel there? You look pretty good there.
Well, I was tired, of course, yeah.
And proud?
Proud, there was still 100 meters to the...
Now, I would like you to reveal to the world your best ever time in a marathon.
3 hours and 3 minutes.
It's unbelievable. That's a very, very, very good time.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
For my age, especially. For my age, yeah. But I ran it when I was 52 years old.
Yeah. I'm going to be unkind to you, but I'm being sort of unkind to myself as well. It's really only old men who run in marathons anyway, isn't it?
You mean only old men run marathons? Yeah, OK. Maybe, yeah. It has to do something with age. And
it does?
Maybe.
Why did you do it in the first place? What was the... What?
You know, I always run a little bit in my life. Yeah, that means 5, 6 kilometers 2 or 3 times a week, I would say.
That's what I do, more or less.
Yeah. And then one day we stood with my family at the Brandenburg Gate, and I saw the running in of the Berlin Marathon.
Yeah. And it inspired you.
And the people were not young, as you say. They were not slim, everybody, yeah. And I thought I can do this too, yeah. And next year I did it.
Good for you. We're running out of time, and I want to get to one thing. We often ask our guests to bring in something, a cherished possession, and you're going to tell me about this plate. I know nothing about it. What's the story?
The story of this plate. What do you think? What could it be? Is this Russian?
I can't read it.
You can't read Russian.
Intercosmos.
Intercosmos.
I see
that's the same.
Russian for intercosmos.
It has to do with Russian and Germans relationships. Yeah. Here's the year 1978. Yeah.
What was going on in 1978?
Yeah, 1978. The first German man was in space. Huh?
The first German man?
First German man.
So it was an East German?
This was an East German cosmonaut, we called it a cosmonaut, called Sigmund Jähn. Yeah? Sigmund Jähn, and this is the Soyuz spaceship, this little white thing. And Sigmund Jähn handed over this plate in 1978 to my grandfather.
To your grandfather?
Yeah. And my grandfather, who was at this time already a little bit confused, a little bit ill, was very old, thought that he is asked to donate something for a national solidarity organization or something like this, and put 100 marks, German marks.
That was a lot of money.
Was a lot of money. Put 100 German marks here. Yeah, and this is a story. This is a story in another way, I'm telling in the novel too.
Exactly.
Yeah, in a very changed way. You know, how do you say?
In a slightly sort of transformed way.
In a transformed way, and would be very interesting to talk about how things from reality transform on the way to the novel. Yeah?
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
That's your lot. We don't have time for our traditional quiz today. The marathon man, the thinker, the author, Eugen Ruge, he has been a great guest. If you've enjoyed his company as much as I have, come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and tschüss.
Bye.